recommend that you never stop networking, and fostering that network is so crucial. 80% of jobs are found that way, by the way. And I just always put myself out there. I'd go into a presentation and I'd love the person who presented, and I'd be like, I loved your presentation today. Would you be open for coffee? And that's how I built my network. And then I would ask curious questions. How did you get here? What do you think? Then when a job opportunity came, I'd go in and I'd call one or two or three of these people and say, I have this opportunity. What do you think? I've only been in my job a year. Do you think it's too soon? What are your thoughts? My ultimate goal is to get here. Does that logically fit? And then I would spitball with them to help me figure out my decision. And then I would always say, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario?
Welcome to the Unleashing Leaders podcast, where we work with willing leaders to accelerate the changes you seek. We'll learn from the experiences of different leaders facing real challenges and distill practical, purposeful steps to apply in your context. I'm Lee Scott, your curious co-pilot. Together, let's make positive changes for our companies and communities. Welcome back to the Unleashing Leaders podcast. Today, we have a little bit of leadership candy for you here with a phenomenal guest. KL Shaw is joining us from right on the border there in New York City and New Jersey. She has had a very distinguished career that we're looking forward to hearing about, but she is currently your career roadie. She's looking at how to really accelerate your elevation with your career bump, as she likes to call it, to make sure that you're playing in the right places at the right levels, and brings a special expertise to something I think we all could appreciate is how do you negotiate those conversations to be able to make sure that it incentivizes and rewards your hard-earned skills. Today, we're going to be looking at, how do you, whatever arena you're in, how do you be thinking about and be purposeful about being in the next arena that you want to be in? And then how do you put yourself in the position and be able to set all the preconditions to help make that happen at the right time and the right way for you? So KL, I think this will be one of those episodes that get shared out and referred back to by lots of people. So looking forward to some mileage with you here today.
I love that. Thank you so much. It's so funny when you say distinguished career. I call it a little bit more scrappy.
Scrappy.
Like started out by selling cars to pay for college, made it to the C-suite, but a million twists and turns along the way that most were unplanned. And so I think it's cute that you called it distinguished. Maybe it ended up being distinguished, but I'll tell you,
I think it's cool. Maybe the right word is cool. It's just a cool career story, right? It's just like, that is awesome. And you're right. There's got that scrappiness to it. But you were saying some things that I'm like, oh, that's bad A, and so they're going to love this. So, well, why don't we just go there then? You said you had a passion for cars and you found that, you could, pay for your education by doing that. So like, what was your first dealership? And then how did it springboard unexpectedly from there?
Well, actually, it was a used car dealership. I followed a boy who owned it. And I sold cars and I was hungry for the money. And I had to find a way to pay for school. And actually, I had 3 jobs, so that was just one of them. But there was a love for cars that came early on. And I then decided I wanted to get into the corporate side of automotive. And my path was also funny because I quit school. My parents didn't have much to say about it because I paid for it.
There's a certain liberty that comes with that, yes.
But I was making more money than I would have as a school teacher, which is what I was originally going to be. And I realized I actually wanted to get on the business side. And so I ended up going back to school, doors open, doors closed, pried them open, went back to school, and I worked for General Motors for 5 years. And they paid for me to finish school. They paid for my MBA. And I had an incredible run with them. And then my career took off from there, mainly because I said yes to every opportunity. Don't always recommend that that's a strategy for people because, shouldn't say yes to every opportunity, but I was hungry to learn and grow.
Yeah, but early on, you got room to maneuver and explore, right? And so take some risks and find out, because it's hard to know whether it's a yes or no unless you've, kissed a few frogs, right? A few career frogs, as it were, right?
Yeah. I think there's maybe a few things I would have done differently. I would have maybe explored a little bit different, but early on, you're absolutely right. The more breadth that you can get in the early stage. Maybe go deep here and there, but I think I flipped jobs almost every year inside GM, went to BMW, did the same thing. And they always put me on sort of a fast track program because they saw something in me. I had a really good attitude. I had tons of grit. I had tons of resilience. And I worked really hard and I was super optimistic and had a really great attitude and a problem solving kind of attitude. And they always liked that. So that's how I ran my career, more just from those values, and saying yes just opened more doors for me. So that when I wanted to go deep, I had a bunch of different experiences so that it logically made sense. As I grew, and I would say as an HR leader, what I found difficult was when people only grew this way.
In a vertical ladder fashion. Yeah.
It was so hard to be able to justify with different leaders why I would put Lee into this function, because the dots didn't connect. If like they were only in finance their whole career, or they were only in engineering their whole career, it was harder for others to say yes to them. And even though they might have been a good leader, it was a little bit more of a struggle if they hadn't sat in any of those other chairs. So I am so grateful for those yeses that I had in my early days, because it opened so many doors for me, so many more doors.
Yeah. And it can become a situation where a person in that vertical progression, their identity becomes synonymous with that vertical. And as I think we all know, we're all more than the sum of a particular job title or a particular, zip code or a car that we drive. There's many dimensions to all of us, but in a career perspective, yeah, that's, you get to a certain point of expertise and that almost becomes a liability. Now it's not that it's impossible to recover from that, but to your point, being able to at least early on, have that range of experience, that also helps you choose the right vertical, what ladder do you want to lean your career against? And it also makes it more possible for doors to open mid-career. And I think you said you gained something. The word that came to my mind was perspective. Would you say that? I mean, that seems too shallow though. Like, what did you gain from that variety of early career experience that really has served you well? How would you name that?
Gosh, it is very hard to name it in one word. Certainly perspective. Certainly knowledge. I would say because I hit the ground running in every single job, because I always had this thought, I need to prove it early on. So I think curiosity was probably the most fundamental thing that I latched onto, because my problem solving ability, my optimism, and all the other values that I shared a minute ago, the curiosity got me through the door. And then I wanted to solve problems, and it got me also in a little bit of trouble sometimes because
Oh yeah. That it does a number on cats, I hear, that curiosity thing.
people don't really also love to be questioned. And in order for me to find the best solutions to these challenges that we're facing, I need to ask the right questions. And sometimes people would get their nose out of joint because maybe I'd be asking questions that they designed something a certain way and it's no longer viable and working. Me asking these questions mean they might have done something wrong, when the reality is you never did anything wrong.
Different conditions. Under those conditions, it was great, right? The conditions have changed. Yeah, I will think I mean, Kale, that's something I early on, like you, wanting to help, and you're just like, hey, I want to add some value, I want to prove some worth here. But you're right. Early on, asking those questions were like, who designed this and why is it being done this way? And it's like, man, you're 20 nothing and you're showing up with judgment, like, cool your jets, buddy. Versus saying like, oh, hey, what were the conditions that this was designed for? Like, hey, how did this get us out of the last scrap that we were in? Right. Then being able to ask, okay, how have conditions changed?
I didn't know that in my 20s.
No, didn't know that either. Right. And so then you just, somebody's like, well, how can you help? And you say this and they're like, get out of here. And you're like, I'm confused. But it's like we were stepping on our own, feet,
in that regard. So asking those questions in a way that were both respectful and they removed the shame and the blame and really could acknowledge the fact that that was a great innovation at the time. And now the conditions have changed.
I would have, knowing what I know now as a professional coach, I might have gone in asking different questions, but like I was like, I got to get it done, man. Like we got to roll. I was like flipping jobs every year.
We're young. Like the one thing we have is time, and we're so impatient. We're just like, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go, and you're like, dude, you got time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would have probably approached it a little bit different. I still would have used those same values. And I always did it really, really thoughtfully. I think I'm, a kind person. They recognize that. But there was a couple people that got their nose out of joint. But generally speaking, yeah, I wanted to do great work everywhere that I went and treated people with great kindness, I hope, great
Well,
care.
there's a piece here I want to pull out just a little bit because I think people listening to this can say like, oh, well, yeah, it was easy for her because she's, heck, if she started selling used cars, a lot of people would say that that'd be the scariest job in the world, right, to do. So there's clearly already a confidence and a self-assuredness or something that's going, I don't have that, so I couldn't do what she's doing. But I want to pause there for a second because the other side of curiosity is fear, right? And it's like, if you're curious, that means you don't know something. It means you're not an expert in it. And for many people, that results in fear and being frozen and not taking risks and not put themselves out there. But the conditions for curiosity are exactly those. So instead of that stopping you, that ignited you and got you to say, hey, that drives me more. I'm willing to step into a realm of ambiguity. And rather than being paralyzed or overwhelmed or scared, you're like, this is exciting and fun and neat. And so there's a framing there that you're doing somehow. I mean, could you share a little bit about what was going on behind those eyes of yours to be able to see things in that way?
I wish I could. It was innate. I really looked at it like I don't have anything to lose. I think
That's it. Yeah.
at that stage, I didn't have anything to lose. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have a car payment because every job that I had in corporate, I got a car insurance and gas covered. So I had my rent to pay. And then eventually when I had a mortgage and then I had a child, and throughout that process, I lost my husband and I was then solely providing for my daughter and I. And so the stakes changed as I grew. But in the early stage, there was this part like, and it's what I'm talking to my Gen Z daughter about, who just graduated college. Like, now is your time to take the risks. You have the safety net. You can stay at home. You don't have to worry for, and the safety net until you have children, and that starts to change. And even then,
and even if there's a mistake, you have time to rebuild, right? Let's say you bet it all on 17 and you lose it in a particular, you have time to rebuild.
But I would say this, you always have time to rebuild. And the part that, if you make good decisions in terms of your financial investments, back then it was like you need to have 3 months or 6 months in your bank to cover. Today, it's maybe 12 to 18 months. Make smart decisions with your money. Make smart decisions with not living too far beyond your means. And you are then always in the driver's seat, because if you're in a situation where you're not happy, you can walk away. So I help people walk away from their companies and proactively raise their hands for exit packages. We know we haven't got into that yet, but
no, you're in the business of unleashing leaders, just in a different way. Unleashing them from unfulfilling, not optimal employment, right?
Right. So this when I say I was fearless, I still am, because I launched a company, and that's not for the faint of heart. The stakes are different, but I think we always want to be living in this state of, I am in the driver's seat. No one puts baby in the corner.
Nobody gets to put me in the victim. Nobody puts baby in the corner, right? Yeah. That just to highlight that point you said, though, I mean, you said it was innate, but just because it was innate in you doesn't mean it can't be learned by others. And so I think what you did is you quantified the fear. You're like, okay, jumping into this role, taking on this new assignment. I've only been in this role a year, not enough to master it yet. I'm going to take on something new. So you're in this perpetual new state. I think they see that like, what exactly do you fear? Like, I'm not going to be perfect yet. And it's like, you're 20 nothing, relax, right? Of course you're not going to be perfect yet. We're like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be destitute. I'm going to die alone in a gutter at 90. And you're like, no, like, so I think to your point, if that fear is paralyzing it, what you did is you asked yourself, what do I have to lose? And there's always something, but you're like, but that's trivial and it's asymmetric to the things you have to gain. Well, when you have that, and then there's things you can do to buffer it. Like you said, build your savings account. You've got a fallback plan. All right. But don't let a risk stop you. Really try to ask yourself, what is the risk and is it worth gambling for? And many times the answer will be yes. And maybe sometimes the answer is no, but now it's an informed choice, not just an automatic shut it down.
It's so well said. I also leaned into my mentors and all the incredible people in my network. So I worked very hard to build an incredible network in all the organizations I worked in, to size of about 125,000 employees. So tons to network inside both of those companies. I didn't do as well on the outside because I didn't have a lot of time. And I wish I would have done more on the outside. And I recommend that you never stop networking, and fostering that network is so crucial. 80% of jobs are found that way, by the way. And I just always put myself out there. I'd go into a presentation and I'd love the person who presented, and I'd be like, I loved your presentation today. Would you be open for coffee? And that's how I built my network. And then I would ask curious questions. How did you get here? What do you think? Then when a job opportunity came, I'd go in and I'd call one or two or three of these people and say, I have this opportunity. What do you think? I've only been in my job a year. Do you think it's too soon? What are your thoughts? My ultimate goal is to get here. Does that logically fit? And then I would spitball with them to help me figure out my decision. And I would always say that what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? Worst case, I don't like the job. I'm still going to learn. Best case, I will, in best case, it's a stepping stone to where I want to go. And, no matter what, like, I really can't lose. The worst case was never getting fired. That was never in my mind, not ever. And I think if you're thinking that way, what a horrible way to go into something, because you're already putting negative energy around it. None of that's within your control. Focus on what you can control. That's how you show up, how you treat others. It's the only two things you can control. The rest of it is not up to you. So I think if I were to look back, the one mistake I made, I worried too much. I worried about pleasing others, or would this person be happy with what I delivered? Or did I make a mistake in an email? Did I spell something wrong? Did I not spend enough attention to detail? I worried about those things, and I wasted a lot of energy on those things when I wished I would have just picked my head up a little bit and focused more on the bigger picture. That's the one area that I think if I were to look back, I would change.
That's great wisdom there for those of you who are out there on this journey and aren't giving up yet. Not worry so much. And I like the two questions you just asked yourself. How can I show up? Right? What state am I going to be? What mindset? What am I going to bring? Who am I going to be in this moment? And then the other one is, how am I going to interact with others? Right? So what relationship am I build? How can I be of service? How can I be curious about what their concerns or needs are? Those are the two levers. And you're right. You have 100% control over those two. One of our other guests, it's been recorded but not released yet, with Janine Dodson. She talks about that early emerging leader career dynamic. And she talks about, like, hey, focus on that sphere of influence, but that sphere of influence is more powerful than you realize. And those are two big things that are in it.
Also, how you respond versus react.
Yeah, but that goes back to how you show up, right? Like, I can show up as I'm the victim in this situation. I'm going to react and get all, whatever. Or I'm like, oh, this is a learning moment. This is an interesting moment. Again, it goes back to that. How do you show up even under stress?
But don't underestimate. That's not, that takes time to build. Like, because triggers are real. We all have them. It's one of the hardest things that I have worked on personally as a coach. I've hired a ton of coaches. because I don't want to react. I don't want to have my fuse go through the roof. I want to know what are the tools where I can take a breath, take a beat, understand what and why am I being triggered? How do I stop being triggered? What are the limiting beliefs getting in my way? Because all of that is going to be a reflection of then how other people see you. And I think it's been the biggest and best investment of my life is investing in learning how to unpack that and what are the lessons I'm supposed to learn here on this earth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that I think would trigger a whole new episode on triggering. So fascinating career evolution. You're a gearhead, you're a car junkie, and this metaphor so applicable, like be in the driver's seat. I'm your career roadie. Like all the metaphors have converged, and unbeknownst to you, all of that was a setup for this late career change to being a professional coach in the 50th decade. So tell us a moment about like how that happened, just from a career transition, and a little bit about what you do, and then let's go into some tips on how you can help others make successful transitions as well.
Yeah, so it's so fascinating. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. If you back up to when I sold cars and the boy that I followed from Canada to the US, all those entrepreneurial skills I learned from him, oddly, 30 something years later, came back. Super fascinating. Yeah, so I mean, I had a 30-year career, sales and marketing for most of it, HR for the last decade. I realized in that time in HR that my purpose was to help people unlock their potential. I didn't know that earlier on. I wish I would have spent a little bit of time trying to unpack that, but it happened when it happened. So it's fine. Not only am I gearhead, I also ride a Harley. So the car references are so in my DNA. It's what I've been doing since I was in my early 20s. And the business side of it, what I saw in my HR experience, I interviewed and negotiated with thousands of people. I saw people do
That's a few. Is that if each one of those is an hour and it was thousands of people, you're at that 10,000 mythical level of negotiating packages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never actually did the math. Thank you.
Mhm.
I saw people do three things badly. One, network, not well. Two, how they showed up in an interview. So not only their interview skills, but how they shared their impact, how they connected with the person on the other side. The amount of snooze fests, I tell you, I took naps every once in a while in these meetings. They were not inspiring. And I can tell you they never got the job. So interview skills were really an area not to underestimate. And then the last one was negotiate. Two of the three I knocked out of the park my whole career. Negotiating was the one that I didn't. And so over this decade, I took notes on the ones that did it really well, what I did really well. And then a few times in my career, I was able to double my package. And I realized when people would send me their friends and their kids and they're frustrated, they hate their boss, they just got laid off. In my private life, people would come to me constantly over that decade and say, can you help? I was having so much fun on the negotiation side. And I said to my husband, when I retire, I think I'm going to do this because I had my coaching certification from 10 years before. And I was seriously having more fun than ever. And I realized that there's actually a real need when you look at the gender pay gap statistics, when you look at the number of people who are negotiating, it's less than 40%, less than 30% for women, even lower than that for people of color. We know the gender pay gap exists. I thought, well, I actually think I can make a really big impact on that and at least do my part. Whether it's a huge impact, time will tell. It's only really, a year and a half into
Hey,
the
if you made a
business.
difference for the people that you serve, then that is a huge impact. And then that benefits their family, their legacy, that, it creates a generational impact you may not even ever get the chance to see. But yeah, yeah. Only 40%, I swear, like all the people that are coming to me have no problem negotiation. But that's also part of our test is like, if you don't negotiate, you can't work here. We're like, if you're not willing to negotiate for you, how in the world are you going to be a good change agent for our customers? So,
So well
yeah.
said. And it's so funny because one of the reasons people don't negotiate is they're afraid that the offer might get pulled. When the reality is, leaders like you and I, we're actually judging your leadership and your skills based on how you negotiate. Are you showing up rude? Are you showing up thoughtful, professional, egotistical?
Reframing it to characterize value, sharing risks, right? Yeah, you're like, okay, that's what leaders do all day long. It just sometimes it's about money, sometimes it's about policy, sometimes about process.
It's funny. I've not ever seen an offer in my experience get pulled because you negotiated, unless you were really rude. I've never pulled one, but I have heard one instance with a recruiter. I was on her podcast. This CEO pulled the offer from a CFO that he made the offer to because she didn't negotiate. So think about it. Customer care roles, sales functions, HR, finance, vendor partnerships, supply chain, any warehouse, like all of these jobs, you are negotiating daily.
Fundamental competency of identifying where there are gaps in perspectives and being able to negotiate and facilitate that closure.
Yeah. So it's really an important skill. So I said, I think I want to do this. And I ended up deciding to pull it ahead. When I launched specifically with the salary bump, and that is for people about to jump into a dream interview. We're tightening a few things up, getting you ready to have that financial discussion, or you just got a job offer, and I'm gonna help you close it. But what happened was people started coming to me at an earlier stage, and the stage of, I don't know, but something doesn't feel right. I know I want more. I'm not sure if I want to stay. I'm not sure if I want to get promoted. They're jerking me around. I don't know if I want to leave, but I'm at this like time, and it's people in this place of, I want more out of my life. So I built another product called the Career Bump, and that is a 3-month coaching program, 3, 6, however many months you want. Both of these bump sisters actually share close, because sometimes you'll bring me in as a salary bump to close it, and then we'll negotiate your exec coaching to onboard you in your transition. And so your company then pays for that coaching. So that's been a beautiful transition. But then there's a third sister that came out by accident.
Anybody who's had more than 2 kids knows what you're talking about, where you're just like, oh, there's the third kid. Like, how did that happen?
Yes. And yes, she could be a stepsister. She could be a full sister.
An adopted or in-law, right? Yeah.
The beautiful part about her is that I did a couple of videos about revenge quitting and quiet quitting, and why that's the worst idea ever. You should proactively ask for a package instead. So that has been really interesting, because people are so ready to go, but they don't know that they can go with a package. And in today's market is especially interesting because companies are looking to cut costs. Companies are looking to save money, and they're always looking. I sat on that side of the table having conversations every day with leaders about org, skills of the future, what jobs we're not filling when people leave, what we need, and do we have to cut heads? Because unfortunately, that's the lever that a lot of companies pull. Don't recommend it.
Yeah,
but they do
it's
it.
their highest cost function. It's an expedient thing you can do. Just the problem is usually if you hit an artery, it's worse than if you didn't. But you got to do what you got to do. So
yeah, that's a whole nother podcast episode of how CEOs could actually do this in a way. I just did a video to the Intel CEO. Instead of cutting the 26,000 heads that he cut, first line of action as the new CEO, if he had just put his open headcount on hold, 5 to 10% of his company was between $1 and $1.8 billion, I would have saved him. I mean, you don't have to cut heads. That is actually not how you establish cut.
That shouldn't be your first order of operation. That's for sure.
Absolutely not. And there's waste everywhere operationally. So anyway, but
then that'll be another episode on the whole lean stuff that you can do, where you're like, look, if you got more out of your people, you'd be surprised at what you could do.
Yeah. And also, if you ask the right questions and you looked at how many people are using, have partnerships with different vendors that are crossed over, that have not been structured properly. Anyway, it's significant. Millions of dollars of waste in every organization. And as the HR person, I was always navigating that with the CEO. Anyway, so the exit bump was born, and she basically helps you proactively ask for packages, or negotiate more if you're exited, because all of the above are possible. And so far, I mean, I've had an incredible track record. I had a woman who was 35 years in her career with one company. Time to go. She was ready. Her CEO, it felt like the CEO, something was off, and she was going to retire. I'm like, don't do that. I have an idea. And she got $2.3 million, 1 month for every year served. Yeah. So it's possible. And so for people who are really stuck and who are really like very stressed, like there's people who are in a really tough situation, I help them get out of that and then give them a little bit of runway to figure out what their next step is. And so that sister moves into the career bump. Salary bump always gets layered on because she doesn't want to be
Well,
left
one
out.
ending
And
is a new beginning, right? And then, yeah, each one of those has an opportunity to redefine it, what it looks like. No, what a great composition of offerings there. So again, just to recap, there's the kind of chronologically, it started as the salary bump, then the career bump, and then the exit bump, but they can happen in any order of operation depending on where somebody is.
yes, many utilize all three. Yeah, it's so fun. I mean, I had a woman find me on YouTube, exit package. 3 days later, she had her exit package. 2 weeks later, landed her new job. So she started with the exit bump, went to the salary bump, and then she negotiated me as part of her new package for a 3-month coaching, which I know will extend even further because there's just so much great work to do.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, if you don't mind sharing a couple little tidbits for our listeners, one in particular, I think that is underestimated is when you're in a position. One of my favorite expressions is every day is an interview. My employees are literally sick and tired of me saying it, but I'm just like, every single day is an interview. And I've had some folks that have come in like, well, I'm getting ready for this interview. I'm like, no, you've already interviewed for the job. You're just going to now go to do the formal thing to remind them of what you've done in your prior interviews, right? Especially if you're an internal candidate. But even in an industry, like, there's people talk, people make connections. So when you're in a role, what are some skills about how you can be building relationships as you go before you need them? That a leader can be mindful of, especially in that mid-career kind of range.
So, as I said, networking is gold. 80% of jobs are found this way. So, I think.
Sorry to interrupt you, Kale, but I just want to clarify. A lot of people hear the word networking, they think go to a conference and be a business card ninja. Like, that is not what we're talking about here. Okay, we're talking about the way you build connections, in whatever community you're in. So just to get that bias out of the way. Sorry, I just didn't want folks to not hear that until 3 minutes into this.
Well, I mean, that there's introverts, there's extroverts. You could go to a conference and meet no one, or, the person sitting next to you, who knows, or you meet every single person and you get a bunch of business cards. That is one aspect, but there are so many communities that exist today where your people are, where you can find your people. I'm part of a bunch. One is called the Outlier Project. It's a group of outliers that just want to do great work. It's people over everything, 750 of us. Some of my best friends have come out of it. It's been the most beautiful community. Job opportunities can come out of it. So there's lots of different ways for you to get connected. The question is figuring out, how do you want to share your story? What is your talent reel? So if someone says, tell me about yourself, like, who are you? Tell me about yourself. That's a question you will get on a first date, when you meet someone new, in an interview. You will get asked this question constantly. So the sooner you learn on an airplane, sitting next to a CEO that could change your life, you don't know. So I ask people 3 questions. What do you love? What are you really good at? And how do you want to make an impact on the world? And when I say what you love, like, what lights your fire? For me, it's unlocking people's potential and helping people find their way. Like, there is nothing more exciting for me. When it comes to what I'm really good at, I'm really good at lifting up the hood and solving really complex problems. I run to the fire. Most people run away. I want to get in and get dirty and figure out the best solution so that we have the most unbelievable client experience and obviously earn the most profit. So from a business perspective, 2 major goals. And I always brought people along with me to solve these problems. And that just had people be part of buying into the solution. So what do you love? What are you really good at? And how do you want to make an impact on the world? And how can you make money with it? So if you can learn how to start to tell and articulate that story, when someone says, tell you about themselves, tell me about yourself, you are not reading your resume. You are not saying, well, I work at here, I work at so-and-so, I've been doing that for 10 years, whatever. When someone asks me that, like, I am lit up because I'm excited about what I'm doing. I'm excited about the possibilities of the future. I'm excited about sitting next to you. Tell me about you. And you have a conversation, and it is really about, these conversations are also about how can we support each other. So use LinkedIn as an example. I meet about 15 to 20 new people a week from my LinkedIn, me outreaching, them engaging in my content. I send them a note and I say, hey, thank you so much for engaging in my content. So great to see you there. I'd love to learn more about you, or how did you find me? They then tell me how they found me. And then we say, well, let's get to know each other. Let's jump on a call. And then I get to know them. Tell me about you. And how can I support you? I give away so much for free. But by the way, I can be a W-2 employee and meeting people that are in an industry I'm interested in, that are in a job I'm interested in, that have a title that I want to grow into, that have written a book that blew my mind. You cannot imagine how many people will actually say yes. Even celebrity status, like where you think this person's untouchable. I reach out to everybody. People were like, hey, KL, yeah, let's talk.
Well, and you being an author yourself, right, or a product designer, it's like you're like, oh, and you're like, no, to know that people are interacting with it and using it, like that's super fulfilling, So like, I want to hear about that. Well, I want to anchor on the three questions that you said, because there's two sides to each of those. There's the three questions. It's being prepared with your answers. And then it's also knowing to ask the others the same questions. So just to say them again, what I heard is like, hey, what do you love? Right? What are you really good at? And how do you make a difference in the world, with the corollary of like, and how do you make money from that? Right. But how do you make a difference in the world? Because, something I learn all the time is, if you want to make more money, add more value, right? Make a bigger difference in the world. Trust me, you'll get more from it. Now, so then having your own answers, but like you said, then also as quickly as you can, be able to ask them those questions and have them be, nobody's ever asked me these questions before. People are like, what do you, so, cause the normal ones are this, right? What do you do? Where do you work? Like, what do you hate about the world we're living in right now? Like, those are the normal three questions. Like, let's misery loves company. Let's commiserate, right? Let's, and let's identify you based on your job title. And it's like, those are so nothing burgers. Like, you're not getting anywhere with those questions. And when even folks ask me that, I also flip it and be like, oh, what I do doesn't matter. But let me tell you about what I love. So that would be the third version, is even if somebody asks you a bad question, you can still answer with these questions.
I love that so much. And you're absolutely right. People often lead with, what do you do? Well, guess what? Maybe I'm unemployed, and I'm embarrassed of that. Or maybe I work as one of the most important jobs in the world, which is I'm a mom, or I'm a stay-at-home dad. I work harder than anybody else. And so, like, what do you mean, what do I do? Like, it is a gross question. So let's stop asking that question and tell me about you. What's getting you excited today? Because that does change the entire tone of the conversation.
We do in Idaho, up in Boise here, there's a Leadership Boise program. It's a 2-year leadership development, community leadership program. But one of the rules is the whole first event, nobody knows what your title is, and they don't know where you work. So your entire first couple of days, it's a 2-year program, like 1 day a month type of a thing. But the entire first couple of days, you're not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to ask it. It's not published on anything. That's just completely off limits. So you have to get to know this person, and that's just the rules. And I thought that was such a great program design to do that. But it's that whole notion, right? Like before you asked about what somebody's stuff, get to know the person.
Yeah, but you also need to know how to tell your story, because you need to know how to draw them in and for them to then be curious to learn more about you. And that is a question you will get asked in your interview. It's usually the first question. And then you also need to know how to answer the question, what are your salary expectations? Most people back themselves into a corner and they say, well, I currently make 125. You're like, oh, don't ever do that. Don't ever give a number and don't ever say what you currently make. Your answer to that question should be, well, talk to me about the comp philosophy inside your organization. How are you structured? What is the budgeted range that you have? Let's get grounded there, because every company is different and they're asking you about salary. And there's like a whole comp package way beyond salary that people don't realize that, you got salary, bonus, and equity. Those are your top three. But what about car, insurance, gas? What about health insurance? What about paid time off? What about personal development? What about coaching?
Yeah. And then for each of those, how are they delivered? This is so funny, Kel, because literally what I'm doing right after this is I'm recording an update to our UL compensation philosophy, because we're just like, we have a really compelling and amazing way that we do it, but we've never recorded it. And so like we've written it down, we're recording it. It's not part of our recruitment, so that when they show up, we're like, here's the levers, here's the ones that you have control over, here are the ones that are conditional, right? And it is not for everybody. So don't get in here and be here a year and a half and be like, still asking me this question, what's your compensation philosophy? Because like if you, especially as an employee owned company, we're like, you got to know what the levers are, because otherwise we don't want you on the stinking team. So that's literally what I'm doing next.
Can I tell you how few companies do this?
Oh, none of them. Yeah. And what we're doing is so amazing. I mean, just to brag for a second, but like we are doing, when our plan administrators for the 401ks and the ESOP stuff, when they talk to us, they're like, nobody in the entire world is doing what you guys are doing. But then we still get new hires like, well, what's our salary? And we're like, well, that is the least of your interest right now. Like, yes, it's going to be good, but let us tell you about these other things. And they just can't even comprehend it because it just blows their mind. But yeah, no, that we feel like that is something that, I mean, again, whether it's not just about getting them at a good deal, I want them to know what they can do to influence that so they can be the best contributor possible.
That's game changing, truly game changing. But you have to know that before you give a number. And you have to have done your homework. You need to know what the market is paying. Don't, look at the range that was posted and use that as the gospel, because guess what? They might have just pulled that out of their ear. That may not be what the market is paying. So you need to do your homework, and you need to give a nice enough range where the low end of that range is a number you'd be happy with, and the high end of that range is the number that you would be over the moon with. But beyond salary, let's talk about all the other levers. Let's talk about getting severance included in your package. Let's talk about sign-on bonus. What are you leaving on the table from your previous company? There are so many things. Pensions. What about long-term investments, short-term investments, different commission structures, bonus structures? There's a lot to talk around the comp, and that is not a conversation you ask before we even start. I wish recruiters would stop asking it. I wish that would stop being the first question that's on the table. And I wish more companies would be transparent about their comp philosophy in the job description, in the posting. That would be an ideal world for Kale. But let's change it together. You
Maybe
and me.
that's part of your third question. How do you impact the world? Well, you unlock people's potentials, but you really create conditions where, both parties are able to get more of what they want, which is a really fruitful, productive relationship, right? As an employer, as an employee, as a customer, as a supplier, right? And I think the other thing too is it's okay to say no. Like we've had a couple of folks where they were like, their expectations of their salary were completely unreasonable from our perspective. And we said, you know what? That's great. We're not willing to pay for that. And I'm sure you're worth it. And if somebody's willing to, that's great, but that's not our price. And so then we'll say, no, thanks. And then they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, no, never mind. So I think there is both sides, and they can tell us like, hey, we'd love to work with you. That'd be great. I think I could get more than, and then be able to shake hands and go away. And maybe 10 years from now, you end up being somebody who refers me a deal because I treated you with respect in that negotiation. Maybe you end up being a boomerang. Maybe I end up coming to you asking for you for a job. I think that's the other part is like be able to walk away without burning bridges, because we can disagree and not like I can negotiate for a car and be like, I'm not willing to pay that price for a car. We can walk away, but maybe I come back a few years later because you treated me so well and I buy the next car from you. So I think that's another thing about negotiation. People think it either ends with a win or a loss. And I think, no, it either ends with a win or it ends with a win. That's up to you.
So well said. Every situation that I set up with my clients is a win-win. And that you walk away with skills that will take you for the rest of your life, that will hopefully you call me again when you need a negotiation. I've had several clients actually negotiate with me, get laid off. We negotiate that package and then we're working together again. But yeah, I think a win-win is always the best approach. We doesn't need to be this ugly, knockdown, drag out.
Yeah. And even if it ends in a no, the win can still be, hey, that was a positive, like touche, well played, right? We oil off and we go our separate ways, and that's fine. But there can be still a relationship win there. Well, KL, if you wouldn't mind, I know we're getting up against time here, but if you wouldn't mind sharing one more little tip about right before the interview. I think a lot of folks focus on what you do in the interview, but I know this is a passion of mine. I've done this and I'm not nearly as skilled as you. I only play this, part-time on the side. But there's a thing that you do pre-game right before the interview that I believe sets the tone for what happens in the interview. Would you mind sharing a couple of tips on that aspect?
Ooh, I want to hear your tips. Well, first of all, it depends on who you are. I meditate. I get my head in the game. I make sure that I've practiced. I make sure that I'm ready to rock and roll and that I walk in with whatever it is that fuels my confidence so I can walk in fully prepared. But having done my homework, having prepared, and getting my mindset right are the absolute non-negotiables. Not everybody meditates and not everybody would go down that road.
You can find your own strategy for getting those things, but yeah, being absolutely clear about like, hey, I've done my homework and I'm in the right mindset, for this conversation.
Yeah. And I'd add curiosity and making sure you have your list of questions because this is a two-way conversation. This is not a one-way conversation. And know what your values are and what your non-negotiables are. So if there's a values conflict and it's a shady kind of feel, like you got to trust your instincts. You got to pull away if it doesn't feel right. So I think trusting your instincts and just reading the room and reading the energy is important because if it's not a great energy in the interview, it's not going to be a great environment for you to be working.
Yeah. Like, hey, if we get married and have a couple of kids, this relationship will work itself out. Like, no, go, run.
Yeah. But I want to hear your tips.
No, I think those are similar. One of the things for me is you've talked about the mindset. It's just like, yeah, I want to really know who am I showing up in this conversation? Like I am, and again, naming what it is, whether it's like, I am, curious. I am a connector. I'm a problem solver. I am a getter doner. I am the most eager. I am the hardest work, like whatever that is, but like know what that energy is and make sure that it shows up in your body. Right. So if you're like, yeah, I'm a really good hustler and you're hunched over and your voice is constrained, it's just like, no, get your body to match your identity, so when they walk in, they know what superhero you are by the way you walk. Or if you open up your Zoom, video or whatever, like the way you're sitting, and the difference can be like, I'll work with folks to be like, okay, you can sit like this or you can sit like this. Like that might only be a centimeter or two in terms of it's like, but what is this if you say you are this and then you look like that, there's a mismatch, right? But if you say you're this and you look like this, now there's a match. So whatever that identity is, make sure it's modeled in the way you walk in the room, the way you are sitting in front of that camera. And I think that makes you now at least a consistent entity. Now that may not be what they want. They're like, what? You're way over the top, dude. Like, no way. This was for an intern to do filings. Right? Get out of here. Right? That's fine. But then you didn't want that job anyways. Right? So I think being true, but if they being authentic, that's what I think it means. Matching the mind state and the body state when you show up.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I would call it energy. What is the energy you want to bring? I actually have a tool that I share with all of my clients. It's called Virtual Sapiens, and it is an AI tool that monitors your lighting, your tone, your speech, your speed, your angle, your light. I think I said lighting, what you're wearing. Is it distracting? Your positioning, your camera, and it you ask questions. So it's me asking questions, you answer them, and it then evaluates you, and you can go back and do it as many times as you want. So many interviews are now done via Zoom. Hand gestures. Are you moving your hands? How are you engaging with the camera? How are you showing up? What are your shoulders like? It'll give you all that feedback. So well said. Yeah, it's huge. How you show up when you walk in is everything. It's everything. Just like how you answer the question, tell me about yourself.
Yep, absolutely. Well, that is fantastic. Well, Kale, where can people, I'm sure there's several people going like, where they've already Googled you, they're trying to find you on LinkedIn. For those folks that are either, they love where they're at, right? But they're looking to maximize the doors that are open for the future, or they're ready to make a move. Where can they find you?
So I am LinkedIn first, LinkedIn every day. I give a lot of tips, tons and tons of free tips on LinkedIn.
So follow you on LinkedIn, right? And we'll add that to the show notes for sure. Yep.
Yeah, I'm also on Instagram and TikTok and all the things. So YouTube, etc. But LinkedIn is the primary source. It's where I give the most. And it's such a beautiful, friendly platform where everybody is engaged in it. So you can read the comments and they're always really thoughtful and engaging. I will say too, if you aren't already on LinkedIn, you don't have a brand on LinkedIn and you're not posting on LinkedIn, you're really missing opportunities as well, because where you want to be is where you should be engaging and you should be commenting on their stuff, because that's how you'll get exposure. Use that platform. It is the friendliest, most fantastic social platform that exists.
It really is. Yeah, as an early adopter, of all the things social, I got a little burned out on a bunch of them because of like, that is the dark side of social media. I think LinkedIn has really tried to keep it professional and positive. So a great advocacy there. Well, Kale, thank you again so much for being with us to share some of your tips. As someone who loves to help unlock the potential of others, what's one of the hallmarks of knowing that their potential has been unlocked?
Kindness. If you don't show up as a kind person and you don't care about other people, I don't think the doors that you want to have opened will open. So the red carpet is rolled out for you if you treat people with kindness and you care and you give as much as you take. That for me is it.
Thank you again for sharing some of your expertise and your passion. We definitely you're the East Coast version of me, and I'm the West Coast version of you, not from a career perspective, but just in the shared love and impact we're trying to have. So I'm so glad we got a chance to get connected here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today on the Unleashing Leaders podcast. Subscribe so you don't miss a moment that could be the key to your next breakthrough. Let's stay connected and contribute together by grabbing that @Unleashing Leaders handle on LinkedIn, YouTube, or your favorite network. This is Lee Scott. Keep learning, loving, and leading. Our future and our communities are counting on us.